Was 2 days in Mesa Verde enough days to visit? Come along and let's see. Hi everyone, we are Laurie and Rick. We travel part of the year in our Jayco Greyhawk motorhome. We enjoy discovering new places. There's more roads to travel on, so let's get started on this adventure. In this video, I'll share what we were able to see in 2 days. First things first, let's grab a map and some information at the Mesa Verde Visitor and Research Center. The road to the center is just off to the left, just before you enter the park. I have an app that I bought to listen to an audio tour as we drove through the park. It's called Action Tour Guide. Here's a sample of what you hear on the audio guide.
You may have noticed me using the word Puebloan earlier. The Hopi, Zuni, Acoma, Laguna, and other tribes say Puebloan to refer to themselves. Why would they all use the same word? Simple. Because they're all descended from the same group of ancestors. The ancestral Puebloans, as they're called today, built the grand structures we'll soon see in Mesa Verde. For a long time, anthropologists referred to the ancestral Puebloans as Anasazi. This is actually a Navajo word meaning ancient enemy. Now, I'm no anthropologist, but I think it's pretty unlikely that they call themselves that, right? Ancestral Puebloans largely relied on hunting and gathering until the year 700. That's when everything changed. Consistent rainfall in this region made a new way of life possible: agriculture. Over the following centuries, the Puebloans grew tenfold in number and developed an increasingly complex and impressive society. As they grew, they built permanent homes and formed communities. The most important of these buildings were the Great Kivas, large, centralized buildings where members of the community would participate in ceremonies. We'll see and hear more about the Puebloan living arrangements soon.
Next, you will head up the road through the entry gate. As you travel up the road, there are pull-offs to see beautiful vistas of the valley below. This first one is Mancos Valley Overlook. This next one is Montezuma Valley Overlook. The Knife Edge Road, originally known as the Crinkly Edge Trail, was built in 1914 to provide access to the park, but due to the narrowness and the steepness, it was eventually closed in 1957. The picture shows a car driving off the road. I'm not sure I would have driven that road back then. This is called Park Point Fire Lookout Tower. You can see a lot of the valley down there. Let's walk up the trail. You can see some of the road that you drive up on. The valley's so pretty. This Flatlander is out of breath because...
elevation, so...
Yeah. Now some more information from our action tour guide.
Continue driving. Ancestral Puebloans didn't just live within Mesa Verde. Their peoples stretched all the way from southern Utah to the Rio Grande. Since they were all trying to survive in a similar geographic region, the Puebloans across the Southwest shared many similar strategies. The features that almost all communities had in common were dependence on cultivated foods, construction of permanent pueblos, creation of pottery, and use of a special underground room called a kiva. Obviously, different groups of Puebloans still had differing practices and preferences. Just because you live by your neighbor doesn't mean you're just like them, right? Groups that settled farther west around the Virgin River centered their religious beliefs around the great importance rain had in their lives. Rain was so important, they developed an annual cycle of religious rituals dedicated to it. Considering how dry this area is, I'd probably be doing anything I could to make it rain more too. Meanwhile, the Puebloans, who settled more to the east, like in Mesa Verde or around the Rio Grande, relied more on reservoirs than on rain. As a result, the spiritual practices of Eastern Puebloans placed less emphasis on rain-making ceremonies, thanks to their access to stored water supplies.
Once up on top, the main road splits into two ridge roads, the Chapin Mesa and the Witherill Mesa roads. We drove the Chapin Mesa the first day, but if you plan to do some of the hiking on the trails, you'll need to plan more days. The Fairview Community Site has an unpaved 3/4 mile trail. It leads you through the Mesa Top community, including the Fairview House, 4 other villages, and a dry reservoir. This was a farming community supporting dozens of families. Something we find really interesting are the spiral markings that we find in every Pueblo structure we visited. What does this symbol mean?
Community. Here, watchers could keep an eye out for approaching enemies, herds of game, and bad weather on the horizon. The natural elevation of this site made a tower like this one super effective.
We're taking a trail up to the reservoir. At least we think that's where we're headed.
That was common in this area during the Puebloan times. Just one extended family lived here, with multiple generations sharing the same house. It shows us that not all of Puebloan society revolved around dense, multi-family structures like Farview House. Plenty of others lived in separate homes, though these were almost always located very near to the larger structures. Most such families did ultimately move to the cliff dwellings. After all, once all their neighbors moved away, living in isolation became a lot more difficult and a lot more dangerous. There's safety in numbers.
There are smaller loops off of the main ridge roads. We are driving to the Mesa Top Loop, which leads to the Spruce Tree House stop. You can do a self-guided tour here, but we didn't have enough time since we had a timed entry tour coming up at Cliff Palace. The Cliff Palace Loop Road is a 6-mile drive with overlooks of the cliff dwellings, along with Cliff Palace and Balcony House. We waited up top for our tour to begin. Seeing this amazing place was one of the reasons we came here, a once-in-a-lifetime bucket list for us.
The difference, in case you're looking at all of this rain that's about to come and thinking, how are we in a drought? It's rained on me every day I've been here. Weather is what's happening now. Climate is trends over time. So the weather is still quite damp, but it is trending drier. So for example, we had a super dry winter.
Just as we were finishing our tour, it began to rain. Time to head back to camp. Day 2. The goal is to drive the weather reel Mesa Ridge. Today's supposed to be a warm one, and the drive to the end of the road takes quite a while. So we decided to drive to the end and work our way back up. Then we saw this, so we stopped to see what it was. These ruins are just about in every cliff face if you watch for them. It's early and already warm, but now it's time to hit the trail. We're walking down to Step House. Wow.
This alcove is home to two different time periods of people and architecture. So on the far left are the oldest homes. Those are the pit houses from the 500s, 600s. And then after those folks left, their descendants 500, 600 years later came down to the same area but built cliff dwelling on this side. So you're welcome. We do have a guide if you want to borrow that, and it talks about this whole area. I'm here if you have any questions.
This is amazing.
If you'd like, you're welcome to climb the ladder.
This is the oldest area right here.
Huh?
She said this was the oldest area.
Yeah, this is the oldest.
This one's still covered in the mud. Amazing. Big overhang. Keep it safe. The Cliff Canyon area has lots of viewpoints and overlooks. It was interesting to see the other side of the canyon, looking over at Cliff Palace and some of the other sites that we saw on the first day. What a wonderful place to visit. But to answer, is 2 days enough time to see it? We would have to say, if you can allow more days, do it. We miss things we didn't have time for. Remember to check out the other 2 videos in this series, Durango Surprised Us and A Ticket to Ride. Thank you for coming along in this adventure. Please subscribe to More Roads to Travel On.